Okay, we're back. I've been out racing. Car's already been done. Uh, Make sure you check out AFCO shocks. They've stepped up and helped us out with the small tire stuff. So I'm gonna try and help support them back. So they've always been good to me. Be good to them. So as a racer, I'm always trying to find some sort of an edge, trying to make the car faster. So all these big guys, they're going fiberglass doors and carbon fiber hoods and all that kind of stuff, and it's very expensive. Uh, I've had steel doors on the car forever. I've always just liked the fact that I could put the windows down, so when we go into the trailer, I just hop out of the window after we drive it in. That's always been a factor for not switching over to fiberglass doors. The other thing is fiberglass doors are actually relatively cheap, but shipping is expensive on them. So unless you put in a big order for doors and fenders and all that kind of stuff, then shipping will ding you almost as much as the parts cost. And where I am, I'm far away from everything, so I kind of put it out of budget. So the other option is to make your own parts. And my other buddy Brandon made some parts. He made the wing on my car, and he played around with some carbon stuff, and so he was trying to get me to do the epoxy carbon fiber industry standard kind of stuff, and pricing that out, it's way too expensive. I know why carbon fiber is expensive now. It's if you want like a quality looking carbon fiber part, and you're not painting it, like it's hard. You gotta make the weave line up, and it's a little bit daunting. I could see it getting away from you pretty quick. I did make a hood, a trunk, and doors. So we'll get to the doors and stuff later. I did the trunk or the hood first. Did the hood first, and I ran into quite a few issues with the hood. So to do this on a budget, I decided to skip the epoxy resin, because epoxy resin is probably 3 to 4 times more expensive than polyester resin. So when you're making fiberglass parts, you use polyester resin. When you're using carbon fiber, like NASA, you're supposed to use epoxy resin. The epoxy gets harder. The polyester is a little bit more flexible. Now that these parts have been made for a while, you can feel like the hood gets pretty flexy when it's like super hot out. When the sun's beating on the parts and everything, you grab the hood and it's got some flex to it, but it holds shape, and it's light. It's significantly lighter than the fiberglass counterpart that I made the part off of. I might be getting ahead of myself. Let's play the video here. Okay, so first thing I did was took my old trunk and used it as a mold. So did all the body work on it. I used to have a gas filler door in the back, so I had to fill all that in. We had the wing mounted to the trunk, so I had to fill all the holes in from that previously. So just do standard body work, smooth it out. Spray mold release on the part. I first tried to use wax. The wax, I guess the heat from the polyester resin setting off, melted the wax and ended up eating into the paint, and then I had a mold and a hood stuck together, and that was hard to get apart, and then it wrinkled all the paint, like the resin was just eating into it. That's also mix ratio error. But so what I did was I just wetted out the polyester resin on the trunk, and then grab some fiberglass mat, put the fiberglass mat down, try and spread it out so that it's nice and flat. It's pretty much just dumping resin on, putting layers down. The fiberglass mat I got was pretty thick, so it didn't contour to everything as nice as it could have, but it builds up layers really fast. It was the only thickness that they had locally that I was able to grab, so I was stuck using that anyways. But a little bit thinner mat would be nicer for the first couple layers, because you're ensured that it'll kind of hug the edges and get in everywhere. I think most of the molds I ended up using 3 to 4 layers of the fiberglass. The molds actually used more materials than the actual part, just because the parts I made are extremely light and I tried to do as thin as possible. So I just made some cardboard supports kind of, so that when the fiberglass lays over it, it'll make a fiberglass ridge, because it's kind of like bending sheet metal. If you put bead rolls in piece of sheet metal, a floppy piece of sheet metal is still floppy, and bead rolls will help stiffen it up. So that was the thought process behind that. Just putting in some cardboard just to give it a little bit of a ridge, and then wetting out that and putting more fiberglass down. We're just demolding the trunk lid. Put the extra pieces 90 degrees to the trunk so that we would have a lip there, and then you could make a 90 on it if you wanted to. I didn't end up doing that. Yeah, I did. So this is where the pop the hood and the mold apart, because they were bonding. With the mold release, you can tell it's really easy. The only reason that it didn't just come right out was because some of the edges were rolled over the part. So it was almost more of a part lock than a mold release issue. But when the mold comes out nice and the part doesn't stick to it, the mold doesn't need any work. It's set up pretty good. Out of the mold. And this right here is already out. Just like that. And it didn't peel any paint off this time. Okay, so we got the mold sprayed with PVA right now. Just green stuff. Sprayed it with a Harbor Freight gun. So it's just like a spray-on saran wrap kind of deal. So this is peeled off the mold. It's almost like a plastic bag in a way. So I got this carbon fiber off eBay. Carbon fiber is almost half as much as what I paid for the fiberglass mat. So that's why the part here in Canada would be $20 a yard. I got it for $6 a yard US, so about $8 a yard. And then the fiberglass that I bought locally is $12 a yard. So all these parts, the way that I'm doing it would be like if you're making fiberglass parts. So the main reason that I was making carbon fiber parts is because I got it for cheaper than I could get fiberglass. So is it as strong with the polyester resin? Probably not. It's not as stiff. I tried vacuum bagging it, and it seems like instead of it bonding to the resin more, it was actually pulling resin out of the fiber. So any of the ones that I tried vacuuming, it pulled like a decent vacuum on. The part against the mold would be almost bare carbon fiber. So like you'd be able to feel the carbon fiber. Any parts that I just wet out and then put the carbon down, wet out, and then put like a peel ply, which is it's almost like a piece of fabric that soaks up excess resin, and then I just rolled it in. Seemed to work better. The outside of the part would be smoother. Inside would still be not saturated with resin. It was still a light enough part. So that's something I got to play around with, I guess. But its main thing was cost. Trying to just make lighter parts. So these parts did come out way lighter. The trunk, for instance, my original hardwood trunk is 15 pounds, and the new part was 6 pounds. So it was 9 pounds difference between trunk. The trunk is more flexible than the hardwood part though, so I think if I got the same stiffness as the hardwood part, it would probably be the same weight. But we're building race cars, baby. We're not building show cars. I don't care if it's flexing when we're going down the track. I just want to go down the track fast. So yeah, just putting carbon down. I beefed up the sections where the Zeus fasteners would go because it's going to be pulled on there. One thing that I did was made these cross braces, and this kind of bit me in the ass because I tried to just do a vacuum bagging with a little vacuum, and it pulled a vacuum on the bag. It gets tight, you'll see later in the video, but it did the resin pull thing still. And where that X brace is, now that the car has been sanded and painted, that center section is only 2 plies, and all the other stuff is built up. So where the X is that it pulled, when I was trying to sand it, it just vibrates, so you can't actually sand. And where it did the resin pull, it had little spots. So now when you look at the trunk, you could actually see the X from that piece of brace through the paint. Not a big deal. It's just, you just see it in the light. Also notice on the hood later that you can see some of the carbon cross hatches in the carbon just through the paint. Same thing, just from the resin pull. If I did it again, I would definitely just do a wet layup and then kind of do the same thing, put some mats down and just roll it, just so it soaks up any excess but still pushes down into the part and lets the resin harden up. So I'm just using some poly to make a bag. So you can see the backside looks pretty good. No pools of resin. Got all the extra resin out. And then just a quick video. You can see right there where it pulled the resin, and you can see that the parts showing through. But the outsides were stiff enough. The center piece there was a little bit flexy, and it's still a little bit flexy. Overall, I'm happy with the parts. Like, I'm not a body man. I'm sure if a painter or body guy came over and looked at it, they'd say it's a piece of shit or whatever. But like I said, that's not a car show car. It's a race car. I paint it myself. I do the bodywork myself because if it gets dinged, I can fix it. That's what it comes down to. Is just, it's for me. It's not for anybody else. 35, 40 passes already on the car, and I haven't lost the trunk or the hood yet, so stuff's stuck together still. Alright, thanks guys.
Okay, push me, pull me, at your service.
Who do you watch, me or him?
Do I even care about him behind me? Except that I'll be a sandwich?